My wife claimed she had miscarriage to hide spending our savings on her ex. My wife Natalie came home from her doctor's appointment 3 months ago with tears streaming down her face. She collapsed onto our couch and told me we'd lost the baby at 10 weeks. I held her while she sobbed, saying she needed space to process the grief properly. She said seeing me reminded her too much of what we lost together, that she couldn't handle being around me right now. I understood completely and gave her all the room she needed to heal. For weeks, she'd disappear for hours, claiming she needed alone time to work through the trauma of losing our first child. But something felt seriously wrong when I checked our bank account last week. We'd been saving for a house down payment for 2 years, putting away every spare dollar we had. Now $28,000 was just gone from our joint savings. When I asked Natalie about it, she immediately broke down crying again, saying the medical bills from the miscarriage were expensive and she'd been too emotional to tell me about the costs. She showed me some crumpled papers that looked like hospital statements, but when I actually read them, the numbers didn't add up at all. The math made no sense for a 10-week pregnancy loss, and some of the charges seemed completely random. Therefore, I decided to call the bank directly and request detailed statements for the past 4 months. What I found made my blood run cold and my hands shake. There weren't any medical payments anywhere in our transaction history. Instead, there were dozens of cash withdrawals ranging from $500 to $2,000, happening almost every week. Even worse, there were direct bank transfers totaling $15,000 to someone named Derek Martinez. I'd never heard that name before in my life, but when I searched it online, I found a Facebook profile showing a guy around Natalie's age with gambling addiction recovery posts scattered all over his timeline. But it gets so much worse than I could have imagined. When I confronted Natalie with the printed bank records spread across our kitchen table, she completely fell apart and started hyperventilating. Through her tears, she admitted Derek was her ex-boyfriend from college, who she'd dated for 3 years. She said he'd gotten into serious debt with some really dangerous people and was going to get badly hurt if he didn't pay them back soon. She swore on her mother's life that she was only trying to save his life and that absolutely nothing romantic was happening between them anymore. When I asked her point blank if she'd ever actually been pregnant at all, she looked me straight in the eyes and insisted the miscarriage was completely real, that I was being cruel and heartless for questioning her grief during such a traumatic time. Therefore, I called her sister Rebecca, who'd always been brutally honest with me about family stuff and never sugarcoated anything. Rebecca went completely quiet for what felt like forever when I told her everything I'd discovered. Then she said the words that absolutely destroyed my entire world. David, Natalie was never pregnant. She told me months ago she was pretending because she needed money for Derek and didn't know how else to get it without you finding out. Rebecca said she'd begged Natalie multiple times to tell me the truth, but Natalie was convinced I'd immediately leave her if I knew she was still secretly helping her first love with his gambling debts. Derek confirmed every single detail when I tracked him down at his apartment complex, even pulling out his phone to show me text messages where Natalie called the money our little secret and promised to get more cash from her clueless husband, who never checks the bank account anyway. The divorce papers were filed yesterday morning, and Natalie is now staying with her mother while potentially facing fraud charges. Sometimes the person you trust most completely is the one capable of destroying you deepest.